as a 13-year-old boy, I just was touched in my heart. My heart was touched for the Jewish people.
Today on the newscast, 5 red heifers arrive in Israel. Is this a Bible prophecy breakthrough that helps pave the way for a third temple?
A recent delivery from Texas to Israel is causing quite a stir. Talk is growing that their arrival is prophetic and a prerequisite for the return of the Messiah.
You got to get serious and get into this battle. And what we're watching happening in the governments and the earth and everything is the type and shadow of what's going to happen in the kingdom. Don't mess with us. Don't mess with our kids no more. We're not playing this game. There's so much destruction that's going on with these people. We really need to stand up. See, the Lord has given us the authority to break the yokes. And it's time that the church gets out of the 4 walls and gets in the streets and starts talking Jesus.
They felt comfortable in reaching out to me because of other projects that we had been involved in, and asking me to bring 1 red heifer to Israel if I could locate one here, either in Texas or anywhere in the United States.
Yeah.
So while I wasn't expecting the call the day that came and they asked me to do that, I've done a lot of projects in the land. And so I happily said I will do what I can. I was able to use my staff and my businesses to develop some texting apps and also to go out and search for every rancher that we could find that would potentially be raising perfectly red cows, all red. I started educating myself by going and looking at cows, being with rabbis, looking at what those requirements were. And then I helped put a team together, an awesome, amazing team of individuals that helped with all of that. We put full page ads into cattle magazines so the cattlemen would see that. And then we also went and did hard mail projects straight in by hard mail right into the mailboxes of ranchers that we felt like could help us. And then we hit the road. We were out there driving all over. We got any tips wherever we might see some cows, and we saw many that looked red. And a lot of people say, well, there's red cows everywhere. But what you got to realize is the hair, it may be red in part of the hair, but maybe where it first comes from the cow, it's a little darker. Yeah. And all it has to do is just get dark enough that it could be black, or may not red anymore, or at the end it might be so light it's almost blonde. Yeah. And it just has to get to where it could be blonde. It has to be definitely red from one end of the hair to the other. And there's areas on the cows, whether it's on the udder or on the nose or on the tail, that are the places where you have the problem finding this all red. Yeah. Of course, the big thing is every calf just about gets tagged in the ear on day 1. And so that's a blemish. If there's anything that doesn't heal, if it's a scar that doesn't heal, then that's a blemish. Yeah. Some people don't understand if it's a scratch that'll completely heal, that's not a blemish. That's a small scratch. That's okay. So you have to be able to know the difference. Is this a blemish or a scar?
Strategic biblically.
So, we found the first ones that we found were Santa Gertrudis breed, and that went fairly smoothly. It was absolutely God, because what these ranchers do on day 1 is they grab a calf when it's just born and they put a tag in its ear, and that immediately is a blemish, and the cow's not going to be any good.
Because there can be no broken bones, there can be no scars. Anyways, as soon as they tag it, they have to pinch it through the ear. That's a scar.
Doesn't matter how red it is, it's done.
So you explained to me, if you could again, about 3 cows.
Yeah.
That were never tagged, right, that were actually the ones on this one farm.
Yeah.
A couple of them qualified.
So one of the ranchers that was happy to work with us, and he has probably the most beautiful red cows anywhere in the world. He actually has won world championships with his Santa Gertrudis cattle because they're just so beautifully red. And then they go to the show, and it's about meat. It's about what you can, about being able to cook them, not about their color. But yet when they come and they're that beautifully red, they show well. And so he's won worldwide grand championships with these cattle that he raises down in close to Houston. And we got to his ranch, and he said, we had 3 cows that when they were born, we didn't get them. The mothers got away into the brush. The cows went with them, and so we weren't able to tag them. And he has...
So all these other cows that he owns...
He's got like 400 head.
400 head were all tagged.
All of them.
Except for 3.
Right.
That escaped into the brush that they never got a hold of, that they still had to find.
Right.
But he knew those 3 were non-blemished.
Yeah. Well, he felt like they were.
Yeah.
And then he got all this information from me.
See, this is God to me. This is God.
Absolutely.
Because as soon as they tag it, it's disqualified.
Yeah, and then he would have just tagged them. I mean, even though they were bigger, he'd have put them in a chute and put the tag on them. But what happened was before he did that, he got information that came from our team when we were hunting. And so he saw that we were looking for some. He said, I've got some. You want to come look? And of course, we'd already looked at a lot of them all over that were very close.
How many do you think you looked at?
Oh, there was 7 or 8 down in Comanche, Texas, and there was 5 or 6 up around Gainesville, Texas, and there was some in Missouri that we looked at, and there was several more around Oklahoma. They were all over different places. We even were looking down in South Texas on some ranches. I was on my motorcycle driving around, getting off, climbing on ranchers' fences and looking at, because usually it's the white spots a lot of time on the udder.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get underneath their cow to see if there's a white spot on that udder, to see if this cow's red enough. Yeah. And so we'd been all over doing that. And we got down there to see his cows and actually took the rabbis with me. It's pretty expensive to fly rabbis in to go and do an inspection, but that's what we did. And went down there, and sure enough, 2 of those 3 looked completely red. They looked really good. The third one wasn't, but it was just that was a miracle in itself. And he's a rancher. He raises these animals to sell them. He was willing to sell them to us, and so we spoke for them at that time. Yeah. The bigger miracle of it was after that, a friend of mine.
It had no blemish.
2 of them, no blemishes.
2 of them with no blemishes that were not tagged.
That are not tagged, and we've got them.
Out of all hundreds of heads of cattle, only those 3 survived.
That's it.
And 2 were good.
Yeah. And so we got those, and we're still looking because I'd made a commitment to try. I wanted to find about 7, and that's what I wasn't stopping. So we kept looking. Well, a friend of mine, Dr. Robert Mawiri, who I've been has helped in Israel for many years to help bring in Jewish people from Russia and from around the world by plane loads, helping with that fulfillment of prophecy. He had heard what we were doing, and through him, a friend of a friend knew about a ranch in Rockwall, Texas. So we went out there, and we get to Rockwall, and we get to the ranch, and there's 2 brothers that love each other that live on the ranch. The one brother is actually a jeweler. He deals in all kinds of jewels and diamonds, and has been to Israel many, many times. A wonderful, godly man, knows the word, loves God, and the other brother is the rancher. Now, when he was a veterinarian his whole life, and his name is Ty. And so we get there, and I meet Ty, and he's the most personable, sweetest man you ever met in your life. And he was so excited that we were there to hunt for red heifers. Yeah. Because when he started his ranch in the 1990s, he loved the Bible, and he loved the story of Numbers 19. And he wanted to raise the reddest of red Angus that you could raise. So he purposely had traveled all over the United States, had bought the reddest bulls he could find out of Minnesota, put his whole herd together around these red cattle because of Numbers 19. And by the way, Ty is brilliant. He knows the stars. He knows the stories, the Bible back and forth. He talks to our Father in heaven every day. This guy is sold out. I mean, just as crazy as me, crazier than me, maybe. And we meet, and the Spirit of God just touches us. Amen. And he says, Byron, if I'd have just known, the cows are born at a certain time of the year, and it was getting a little later in the season. It was in October, and by this time, we'd already found the ones down by Houston, but now it's in October. If I'd have known, I had some born that I think were all red, but we've tagged all of them. I said, well, Ty, you got 250 head of cows. There's some of them still going to give birth. Well, a few, yeah. I said, well, let's just pray. We got under a tree. We prayed, Lord, if it's your will, give us a red heifer. Yeah. So we got back in his Ranger, and we drove down through the brush, and lo and behold, there was a beautiful red heifer had just been born, laying at the feet of its mother. Right there waiting on us. It was absolutely incredible. And that was just number one that he was given. Before it was over, there were more burrs, and almost all of them perfectly red heifers. Some of them had some flaws that we turned back, but in the end, we wound up with several of his red heifers that were deemed good. We actually flew some more head rabbis, very respected rabbis had a team of about 5, flew in and inspected all of them.
So the 5 you took to Israel, they came from Houston and northern Dallas.
There was 4, actually at the end. What happened to the 2 in Houston, one of those wound up growing a couple of white hairs in the tail. As Santa Gertrudis, a lot of times they'll grow white in the tail. And that's what happened to one. But one is still completely red and looking good. And by the way, on that ranch in Houston, they do have cows that are past the mark on when they can be used for the ceremony is actually at 2 years and 1 day. They have to be in their 3rd year. There's a lot of misconception. People are saying they have to be 3, so in their 4th year. But no, they have to be going into their 3rd year, and then it's okay.
So because there's a lot of people that have asked me about this. They don't have to be past 3 years old, just past 2 years and 1 day. Right. Then biblically they're qualified to be a sacrifice. Now they can be 2 days, 2 years and 1 day, up to 50 years later. Yeah. And if they're perfect, they're fine. Yeah. To be used as this red heifer. Right.
Yes. It doesn't have to happen right then. That's not like that.
So we know that last year, which we've just left a few days ago, or yesterday, right, was the Shemitah year, which is the 49th year. And as of today, we've stepped into the Jubilee year, the 50th year, right? Are any of the red heifers that you sent there, are they qualified now to be sacrificed?
There's one. Yeah. There's one. The others would go over by a month or 2 months. But there's now, if you were looking at the Gregorian calendar, easily all of them would be. But on the God's calendar that he gave to God's people, not the Jewish calendar. Yep. There is no Jewish calendar. Amen. There's God's calendar.
That's exactly what it says. They're God's feasts.
That's right. And on that calendar, there's the one from down by Houston that would make that timeline, if that was God's will on that.
Yeah. It's a very interesting thing that we're talking about right now, because there's so many things, Byron, that we've talked about that have to line up.
Oh, yeah.
The springs, the preparation of sacrifices. And I was talking about this about 3 years ago, that the rabbis were following a 3-year period that happened with the building of Nehemiah's temple. Like the sacrifices and everything didn't all happen in the same year. They were spread out over a 3-year period, and on that 3rd year is when they brought the sacrifices, and the red heifer was brought forward, and that red heifer was sacrificed. It was burnt outside the camp. Origen, the early church fathers, Filio says that the reason the red heifer was taken outside of the camp is because the Messiah had to be taken outside the camp and crucified. So it was symbolic of that. Many early church fathers equate the red heifer with Yeshua. So, but in that process, we see also that that sacrifice has everything to do with a final cleansing of both the temple, which obviously would be symbolic of us also. Paul says, don't you know that you are the temple?
Yes.
And so we see that in the sacrifice of Christ, the cleansing of his temple, those different things. But without that red heifer, that the temple doesn't get cleansed.
Yep. Here we are.
So whenever the rabbis there in Israel were thinking about, when everything started coming together and they realized that everything's in place except for just needing the red heifer, there's a lot of pieces have to be in place. You have to have the right kind of priest prepared. You have to have the land on the Mount of Olives. You have to have all these different elements that have to be in place before you even need a red heifer. And when they realized everything was in place except for the red heifer, and then they wanted to reach out to Texas to look for it, the first rancher that we talked to, he had first said, well, they called him and said, we know you raised red Angus, and we were wondering if you might have any pure red heifers that aren't. They told him, said, we know it's kind of crazy, but we're looking for a pure red cow. He said, that's not crazy, boys. That's Numbers 19. This rancher knew. They were shocked. Boy, you know about it? Yeah, I know about it. That's, you know. He says, but I tag all mine. The first day they're born, we tag them. And as soon as we tag them, then they're blemished. They have a hole in their ear and they're blemished, so you can't use these. They said, okay, all right, well, thanks for talking to us. And then they got a call back from that rancher, and the next day he says, yeah, I don't believe it, but my hand didn't go out because of COVID. He didn't go tag those cows this year. I got 6, and they look really all red to me. So if y'all want to come look at these 6 that aren't tagged, I've got them caught up in a pen. So they flew right in from Israel, grabbed me, said, let's go, Byron. And we took a team down there to Comanche, Texas. And out of the 6, there was one cow that was just absolutely beautiful red. Every hair, we looked at all of them, but there was one that was perfect. But when we got down underneath there and looked up on its udder, there was a little bitty white spot, just tiny little white spot, and that immediately made it where it wasn't kosher. There were others that looked red to me at first, but the rabbis explained that, you know, you got to look at the entire length of the hair, and that hair can start looking dark at the end. And when does it go from being red to black? That's a little. It's, you know, it's, you don't know for sure. And so what they said, if you bring 10 children up here and say, is that black or red? If any of them say it's black, then it's black. And I said, well, obviously some would say that's black. Well, then that means that hair got too dark. And the same thing if it's white. If it's a little too light, it goes to strawberry, it's still red, but then when does it become white? It's kind of hard to tell. So bottom line, it has to be red, the whole hair, every bit of it. So that was part of the process, and COVID, though, allowed us to go. But that gave us a lot of hope. When we got down there and we saw those cows, we realized that it could be done, that we could find the red heifers. So that's when we put together a big team and went out. I have a technology team. I asked them to go out with, actually my son Cody, he's in data, and he went out and it's called a bot. They make these, I don't know exactly, I'm not a technology guy, but the bot goes out and looks all over the internet and finds the ranchers that have pure red cows of certain breeds, Santa Gertrudis and Red Angus. So we find those ranchers by that, find all of their contact information in the registries, and then we send out text messages to them. Didn't get much response from that, but they saw it probably. And then we put full-page ads in magazines that go to ranchers of Red Angus and Santa Gertrudis ranchers. And then we sent hard mail to those same people. We just kept getting them. And then we got some response. And that's how we were able to find a couple of ranchers that helped us. And we actually went to a lot more ranches that didn't work out, but those worked out. This is the Temple Mountain area. This is the place where God wants every eye on it right here. Right here to the right, this is a deep valley. This is the Mount of Olives. So from here, east is kind of, it's not straight across here like it kind of shows us. East is more like this direction. So right about here where this green spot is, right in this area, this is where the area for the red heifer ceremony that'll take place. And this is where we own the land. Bone Israel has the land for the red heifer ceremony. It's right over here. I could go on and on.
Well, okay, you showed me where the land has been acquired to rebuild the temple, right?
Yeah.
Can you point that out?
Okay, it hasn't been, that's not satisfied as far as exactly where the temple will be or how it will look, or, you know, that's not 100% done by no means. There'll be many people have different attitudes, and even the rabbis think different. And so all that's got to be worked out. And whether that'll be 10 years from now, 100 years from now, no one knows how long that'll be. I know the Bible says it's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen for sure. But the area that I believe it probably will happen will probably be right here. And then the Dome of the Rock.